Welcome everyone to this February 2025 special edition of the Authors Forum. And last month, we had the privilege of opening up this new year with Dr. Kenisha L. Williams. It was a very fiery force. We were talking about the dream factor,
Mm.
and the dream factor in book writing. And so we've always bring guest authors here, and because it's a forum. I told you this forum was inspired by something I learned from the author of the Atomic Habits, James Clear. So he
Yeah.
said one time he had an authors retreat, and there were some authors that they decided to rent an Airbnb, and they split the bill. They just had a weekend. And I said, wow, that's a good idea. He said, by the time everybody was leaving, they lived with new ideas and all that. And I believe, one of those forums is creative conversation, which is one of the way that we learn. So since we started this tradition and the month of December, we begin to bring in authors that have written a book. It has really been very, very inspiring because learning from their perspective has helped a lot of people to see things differently. The first author that we brought to this forum was Dr. Sherry Ann Williams, which I happen to have read the book. I read that book, which talks about you belong in the room.
Yeah.
So today we are privileged to have Jeff. So Jeff, can you just introduce yourself to people? And I want them to hear from you. Just share something about yourself with people and who you are and what you're doing before we get started. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Jeff. Hello, everybody. I live in South Carolina. So thankfully, the weather is starting to pick up a little bit. So that's nice. I'm a leadership coach. And so just like Dr. Mike here, that we're going to do a lot of coaching and speaking and training and different things like that. But it's been my pleasure to be able to learn from people that have been and gone before me. So this forum is very, very cool. So I can that's where, kind of hearing from him and from even Dr. Kenisha and a lot of other people, I've paid a lot of attention. I said, hey, I'm going to put my spin on things as I
Mm.
go ahead. But it's been awesome. It's been a great process. But happy to be here and thanks for the invite.
Yeah, you're welcome. I got to know Coach Jeff Williamson through a mutual friend, Steve Steele,
Yep.
and Lita Dakumos. They actually told me about him. I said, "Oh, I decided to get to know him one-on-one." He came to my podcast. Today, we are privileged to have him. So,
Hmm.
and Coach Jeff, what we'll be doing today is, and we're going to have first of all, a conversational session with both of us. We're going one-on-one. Then after
Hmm.
that, we're gonna have a Q&A so that people we get to really ask you question. Because what we are really most interested is we want to hear your perspective, your viewpoint.
Yeah.
Because I believe and we all have three different gaps according to Dr. John Maxwell. The first gap is the knowledge gap, and the second gap is the experience gap, and the third gap is the perspective gap. And this viewpoint is so important because someone will just connect the dots based on what they hear from you.
Yeah.
So, and number one question I have for you, because you've written two books,
Yep.
and the first one is it still marinating?
Yep. Sure
Okay,
is.
yeah, I want to be sure I get it right. And the second
Yep.
one, actually, I have the two books. Jeff actually sent me the two books. So this is the second one, the other side of the coin, which I'm reading. One of my reading list at the moment. So, what led you into writing books? The reason why I said this is Dr. John Maxwell said one of his mentor inspired him to writing books,
Hmm.
and he said that he asked the mentor, I think his name was Les Perrot, and he
Hmm.
asked him, said, "Why do you write books?" And the mentor told him that there are some people that it won't meet physically, that this book will be able to really help them. I said, "Oh,"
Yeah.
said, that got his attention, and he started writing. So that's the reason why I'm asking this question. So, what is your motive for writing? Yeah, thank you.
So, great question. You know, we all have a purpose. We all have a story.
Mm.
And, what I'm finding though is a lot of times people will say, well, I don't know if people want to hear from this or hear from that sort of thing. And they take and they bury it in the sand, as it were, using it as an analogy. And they, there's so much opportunity, and people could benefit so much from hearing from what we have seen in some of the different, triumphs and tribulations that we've gone through.
Mm.
So my first book is really just one where I just kind of went through life experiences. I didn't have the idea that I would write a second one, or even the third one like I am now. It was just, hey, this would be something that I have learned on these different occasions and different things like this. So it's like the idea of paying it forward. So
Mm.
with both books, people have blessed my life so much, where they just taught me different things and coached me in certain ways, and it
Mm.
stuck with me.
Mm.
So I thought, hey, what a cool idea to put it down into writing. And
Mm.
I like to write and to reflect through my writing anyway. So it
Mm.
was just a natural process to just kind of just type all this information down. But more than anything, it's just to try to pay it forward. It's to try to bless other people who, because I've been blessed by others, and just
Mm.
hopefully they can use that and use that ripple effect and bless others with it too.
Wow. So that means the motivation beyond your writing is not to make money.
Right.
It's not to make sales.
Yeah.
but
I
but
mean,
to,
yeah, it's good to make a sale or two, but it's about people first. We're called to serve others, so that's what I want to do.
wow, that was great. I was reading through Dr. John Maxwell and one of his book I'm reading right now, and he talks about some 10 leadership questions. And so looking at those 10 leadership questions, one of that stood out to me is am I genuinely interested in others? And he called that a motive question.
Yeah.
And I believe that's what book writing should be about. Because
Yeah.
if you don't have a genuine interest in people, on how to add value to people, if all you want to do is to make sales, I mean, I mean, the foundation is wrong.
Yeah.
And because people can see through that.
Yep.
But if you have a heart that you want to make a difference, even if just one person that read this book and experience transformation, it's worth all the time I'm putting it
Yeah.
there. So that's why I put one of those leadership questions.
Yeah.
And this applies for everyone live listening to us now, and everyone that will hear this on YouTube. The motivation for book writing have to be to add value to people.
That's
That
right.
was it. If it is beyond adding value to people, it's all wrong. I'm not talking about it's not good to make money, but listen, the people
Yeah.
that make difference, they are not out to make money. They are out to make difference. It is a
That's right.
making a difference that money becomes the byproduct of that service. So think about every great enterprise. The motivation has been service. So I believe that's what book writing should be. So that's the first question. So the next question I will ask you, Jeff, is this: what was your own personal experience with book writing? What was your experience like when you are writing a book? So as the author of two books now, so what's
Mm-hmm.
your experience like? Share with us um what can we learn from your own book writing experience? What is so peculiar about Jeff Williamson's book writing experience? So we want to get the peculiarity with your own
Yeah.
experience. Thank you.
So I didn't follow what most people will do, and I'm a researcher by nature, so I'll kind of say, well, hey, who all these authors that what did they do? What was their experience? And so I would set up calls and I just asked several questions, and I was like, okay, this is I want to learn all this information about their process and their procedures and things like that. And there were things that I took from those conversations, but a lot of the things that were being said just really didn't fit with who I was as a person, and just kind of some of the things that I would go about doing. Because most time people will say, "Hey, I'm going to write about guitars," okay, And so then I'm going to have an outline, and I'm going to say, okay, what are the things you want to talk about with guitars? Music and the strings, and which kind of guitar, and why this, and they kind of have this charted plan of outline about what you would do with this guitar.
Hmm.
However, I was just one that, hey, it's like I knew I wanted to talk about legacy. So that's what the first book is about. And I feel I'm a very passionate about legacy, and it's so there's a lot of different things that are kind of on my heart, or my heart, excuse me, and in my head. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to try to put that down into paper. I don't know where this is going to fit into the book. I don't know if this is going to be a full chapter, if it's going to be 2 chapters, or if it's a part of 1 chapter, or if it's not going to get used all together. But I would just wake up and I would write. And when I felt that, my tank was kind of coming up on empty and I didn't have much more to write, I would take a break. Some of my breaks would be, I know Maxwell says do it consistently, do it every single day. I did not do that. Don't tell him next month. That's our secret.
You
But I
save,
would,
you save.
yeah, but I would do it when I felt inspired. So my first book took probably about an entire year to write.
Hmm.
My actual time behind the keyboard may have been probably, quite a bit. Well, I'll just say quite a bit less, because I felt like I needed to be inspired. I didn't even know the purpose of the book initially, like what I was even trying to do. So I wanted to write when I felt called to write. I didn't want to force it. I didn't want to make it, try to put a square peg into a round hole. I didn't want to make it where you're forcing something. So after I wrote, I went in and I had about 45,000 words, maybe 50,000. And I'm like, okay, let me try to organize some of this and make it more concrete, and kind of conjoin certain things that could start to become chapters.
Yeah.
And then that's kind of how that all then came in. I start talking with my publisher. Self-published is how I went, and worked with her, and she was a tremendous help in the experience. But I just woke up and started writing. I had no idea what was going to come out, and I know that goes against the grain in most people's thoughts. It's like, hey, today I'm writing about this, and so I'm gonna do that. And I certainly did not. I bucked the trend on that one for sure.
Wow. Well, I can relate with what you talk about, that the first book, and it took about 1 year, because the first step is the is the hardest step, and
Mm-hmm.
and once you've done the first one, so after breaking the ice, so you can now find out the pattern, and
Yeah.
now begin to reduce the time that you use into
Mm-hmm.
writing. And but the thing I like to share with people is, and I learned this from Dr. Tim Elmo, and in writing a book, you need to start blogging, maybe something like writing a little article, something consistent, because
Yeah.
writing should be something is second nature.
Yeah.
And I learned something from Dr. John Maxwell of recent. He said something. He said, when you write, he said, it takes more than a thought to fill up a book.
Yeah.
He said a thought can fill a page, you know, but
Yeah.
when it talks about writing a book, he said it takes a whole lot to fill a
Yeah.
book. And the main thing about and just listen to you, you were talking about you have your own style, and it's really okay. We all have different styles. So, have you ever, and let me share this. What can you talk about the passion factor,
Mm-hmm.
in book writing? So how can you, because we focusing on the passion factor in writing books. So how can you describe the how have you been able to leverage the passion factor in your book writing experience?
Yeah. Um, you know, if if I had to write about carving wood, I'm not passionate about carving wood, so it would be
Hmm.
a chore. It would be such a challenge to try to get into anything that would be outside of an article.
Hmm.
I don't care enough about it to have it be a passion point.
Hmm.
I find that if I'm going to write a book, if I'm going to write something, I want to be passionate about it. It's
Mm,
going to be things that I'm either challenged by, things I want to learn more about, things that have intrigued me from conversation points, things that are who I am as a person, to really show hey, here's kind of some of the things I'm thinking about. For instance, with each one of my books, I'm really big into application. So as you've seen in the book, at the end of every chapter, I have application questions. I think it's important, so I'm going to write about it and also incorporate that into my book. Not that
mm,
it's just a book to read; it's one that you can potentially apply. But and that goes back to my earlier answer. If Even though I'm passionate about writing about legacy, was my first book, and the second book that you're reading now, it's challenging status quo and challenging the we've never done it that way before
mm,
mentality. But if I
mm,
wake up on a Saturday and I'm just tired and I want my coffee and I'm just like, today's probably not going to be a day that I would write very, very well. I had felt and gave myself the freedom to not, because I don't want to force something. So passionate 100%. When I was excited, I was typing.
mm. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And talking about passion, and Dr. John Maxwell, there's a quote I shared this morning, this afternoon on Thinkers and it said something. It said, "People can't catch fire from a leader who has grown cold himself."
Yeah.
Because and I believe, and when you writing about book, it has to be something that you are passionate about, because
Yeah.
passion determines even the time that you write the book. I remember one of my book that I wrote, I was really passionate about this book. That passion was palpable, that I told the publisher that we're going to bring this book out before my birthday last September.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the biggest book I've ever written until that time. But that passion factor was just there. In fact, when I want to write this book, I wasn't really, and I know what I'm going to write, but
Mm-hmm.
the old piece, the framework came when somebody said, and she want me to come to our podcast. Okay, she said, what would I like to talk about? So that morning, after saying yes, I got a blueprint for that, and that was a framework for the book.
Yeah.
So the passion factor was a really, it's like passion is like a red hot something, and when that passion is so there, it keeps you writing at a frequency beyond the ordinary.
Yeah.
And that is very, very important, in writing a book. And John Maxwell said he doesn't like to speak on something that he's not passionate about.
That's right.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and I believe the passion factor is very important. And to everyone that want to write a book, and don't just write about anything, but make sure that what you write, and the same thing about reading a book, it has to
Yeah.
be something that you're passionate about. Now, let's talk about your book writing journey. And what will be your advice for someone that is yet to write their first book? What will be your best advice for that person? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, and it's the idea. The hardest part about starting to write a book is sitting down
Mm,
in front of the keyboard, or getting a paper and pencil and just start writing. So
mm,
the hardest part was just to get down there and get going. Now
mm,
I know I set myself up for failure because I didn't do it every single day,
mm,
but it was just making sure that if you're inspired by something, see where it takes you.
mm,
I think it's very exciting to kind of see, like, wow, that's actually pretty good. You start to feel like, wow, that you start to take the reflections and take some of the thoughts and visions that you're having, and you put it down in the paper where that vulnerability truly comes out, and it's like, good gracious, this is pretty good. And that's where I then just kind of caught the bug and just kind of kept going, and got very excited about it. Um, but from a someone that's just for starting, I would just say just start. You'll know pretty quick into the game here that if you feel like you have a full book inside of you, if you've written 5 to 10,000 words, and you're just like, you still have excitement and fire and you're ready to go, and there's still so much, and you haven't even scratched the surface, you'll have a good idea pretty quick and early on to say, I could actually leverage this into a book. If there's something that you're writing, you're like, I just don't know what the next thing would be, and I'm struggling with this and that, and then maybe not, but and I switched the saying around, but they say the hardest part playing the guitar is picking it up. The hardest part about writing a book is sitting down and just getting started.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah. My last question for you before we have a open up session that people will start asking you question is this.
Mm-hmm.
How do you decide the topic of your book, the title of your book?
And I don't mean to sound funny. The topic finds me.
How?
It just comes into it just kind of comes in your head. You're like, wow, I feel like this is something that I've learned a great deal on, and I think this could bless other people. Or wow, I've really been challenged by this because I've been listening to people and I'm hearing this, and I want to do more research and I want to really kind of learn more myself. But I found that the topics find me. I don't go into it and say, I think we should talk about this. It's something that's kind of been weighing on my heart, or something that just kind of, I just comes to you in times of innovation and times of reflection. In those white space times, it's like, I think people could benefit, even if it's for one person. This is something that, a seed that needs to be sprinkled to see some fruit.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah. Okay, I got two more questions. I thought that was the last question. Yeah, you sparked up two other questions of me. And
okay, sure.
Dr. Timemo said something. He said, anytime he's writing a book, he always have someone in mind as a target.
Yes.
Does that occur to you? Do you have, and when you are writing a book, do you have someone in target as if you're writing it for that person?
Yeah. Like you'd said early on, if I'm doing it for myself, and if I'm just writing just a narrative, then I don't think it's going to have much success at all. You have to write with people in mind. Specifically, it's people that I've had opportunities through coaching experiences, and I'll even write it in my own perspective as the things that I've learned firsthand. So it's how I even thought in certain points, to where, I've addressed some of those things and say, hey, here's where the application now is. So, depending on what the topic is and where you're headed with that is something that, make sure you have somebody else in mind, because, it's not to be funny, but at the end of the day, somebody else is going to buy the book. You're not going to buy all the books yourself.
Yeah.
So you have to try to get to a point where they're understanding it, they like what they're reading, and it inspires them.
Yeah, that's awesome. So this is my last question for you. And I was reading the book. I'm reading the book currently, The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson.
Yeah,
and this is what he said. I just wanted to read out this. It talks about, for a goal to come true, and I believe writing a book is a goal. He mentioned 4 things have to be in place. I want to read this out and tell us, how does this resonate with you, your own experience? He said, for a goal to come true, number 1, you must write it down, make it specific, and give it a deadline.
Yeah.
I realize I always do better with deadline. If I don't have any deadline for any book, I'm not really serious with it. So, so he said, you must write it down, make it specific, and give it a deadline. Number 2, you must have a plan to start with. You must have a plan to start with. Now, on that plan, he said, a plan is not getting there. It's only your jumping off point. So what it means is that you might start with a plan, and you don't have to necessarily end with that plan. So number 3, you must understand and pay the price. You must understand and pay the price. And number 4, you must look at it every day. You must look at that, like that stuff that you wrote down. So what part of this 4 resonate with you?
Of the 4, the most is where you start is maybe not where you think you're going to finish at the starting point. It's not where you actually finish. And that's okay. it's like, the purpose of a lighthouse. A ship might sail off course, either purposely or not intentional, but it recognizes, hey, at the end of the day, to your other point, we have to set a deadline. While I didn't want to, I wanted to have some grace. I also wanted to make sure it was getting done too. But I realized in all that process, what I thought it would look like, and some of the things I went into it, and with preconceived notions, didn't always happen that way. So it's like, okay, I get it. This is going to be a little bit of a change, a little tweak. That's okay. We're still going to get this book done. It's still going to be done by my deadline time frame. It just has a different feel, and a lot of times too, some of those twists and turns and things that we see along the way actually makes it that much better, because we get better, we level up through growth opportunities, and even from failures that we see. So as long as we don't quit from those failures, it's just going to strengthen it that much better.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay, thank you. So we're gonna open up question Q&A, please. If you have any question and answers, any question for Jeff, please, you can unmute yourself. You can ask, live. This is a beautiful opportunity. I want everyone to take advantage of this. We always do this. We did that with Dr. Kanisha last month, because there's some, and there's some questions that we create, the necessary answer that you need at the moment. Yeah. So anyone can go first. You can just put your reaction button on, and if you want to, by raise up hands on the, and you can unmute yourself if you want to ask Jeff a question. Yeah. Okay, Coach Charmaine. Yes.
Yes, Dr. Michael, I'm not asking a question, but
okay, go ahead, yeah, please.
Just noting some of the points that Jeff would have shared when you talk about, because one of the things I am trying to settle with is the title of what I'm writing. I started off with, looking at my own life, yes, and speaking about resilience. It was a session with resilience that really brought me to, gave me the thought of writing. But on a session with Gloria Burgess, she spoke about from stage to page. And then that kind of hit me well, because as a preacher, there is content that I have. But where I'm struggling to move now is you base as content for a sermon. So I'm now to change it into a format where it comes as a chapter. And that's where I am playing around. What I'm doing after the sermons is edit it. And so it should give me that full content. After I've done it and I see what I needed, what I want to add more to it or so on or take out, then I do that. But that's how I am seeking to approach my material that I'll be writing.
Yeah. So, Coach Shami, thank you for sharing. So, what's your question?
Well, how do I condense that information from the structure of a sermon to a chapter in a book?
So, how do you go from stage to page?
Yeah, how do you go from stage to page?
Got you. Wow, that was a good concept, Jeff. Over to you.
Yeah, great question, and I appreciate that. And I'll say this too, as someone that has spoken before a congregation before, be it at church or even off stage, for something that's not, a church setting. Where I have found the things that are the most successful is you talk about what you're going to talk about. You talk about the things then you're going to talk about, and usually there's three, and then you speak on what you spoke about. So it's like, hey, we're going to go into this situation. So even with a chapter, it's entering in saying, hey, this chapter and titles, those were always the last thing that came with me. But I'm going to talk about, communication, for instance, and here's why communication is important. Let's, get into this, get into that. But then there's three main points. It's like that we're going to again get into with communication. And when I spoke on stage and led services, things like that, it's you always want to have three main points per segment. But then at the very end, it's like, hey, now here's where application is. Here's what we talked about. Here's where this applies. Here's different things that you might be able to see success in this chapter. You want to make sure that the reader kind of understands what you're intending by kind of restating some of those stories. And Maxwell does that quite well, where at the very end of every one of his chapters, he kind of has a bit of a synopsis on, you know, what in fact he spoke on. But yeah, I mean, it's go with what you know is my suggestion for what it's worth. You know, again, most speakers, they talk about what they're going to talk about. They talk about it, and it's usually 3 different things to define that topic. And then they tell everybody, hey, again, here's the things that you should have heard along the way.
Okay. Wow. Thank you, Jeff.
All right. Thank you very much, Jeff. Sorry, I
Yeah.
can't stay on any longer. I need to
Mm.
rush off the Bible study at this time. That started 3
Okay.
minutes ago.
Okay. Thank
Enjoy.
you. Yeah.
But
Thank you for
let
asking
me
that
have
question.
well, I got a lot of it, but still I would look forward to the recording, Michael.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah, you will get it. Okay. Thank you,
Right.
Coach Shamin. Okay. Any other
Yeah,
question,
great time
please?
to everyone.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah. Any other question, please? We encourage people to ask question. Please feel free to ask question. And we have another author. Okay. Coach Rams. Coach Rams, she's one of the foundational members. And she, apart from me, she's the only one that I've attended all the meetings. She has never missed a meeting. All the way from California. Coach Rams, I know this is the year that we talk about for your book to come out. So what's the question, Coach Rams? Yeah.
Okay, so my question is like the 4 points you had raised, you said it's not
Yeah.
where you start, that you end. So the reason my book hasn't finished is because my book has changed twice.
Okay. And it's
So
okay.
this is the third book.
Mm.
And I have finished it, but
Okay.
I keep needing to edit it because, like you said, who are you talking to?
Mm.
Part of me want to mentor my children for the future.
Yeah.
Part of me see a lot of parents struggling to raise teenagers,
Mm.
and part of me see many parents are looking back and said, "I wish was there, but
Mm.
shouldn't I have pursued a career if I was
Mm.
gonna actually be available for my children?" So
Mm.
there's this toss up, and all these stories has to do with me interacting with people
Yeah.
in my coaching programs, me being part of small group studies where it's mostly parents, and we have all this conversation going all the time. So part of me also wants to kind of praise my parents for what they did well because they
Mm.
both had high powered jobs.
Yeah.
My mom being a principal, my dad worked for the federal government, but they still made sure we were in boarding school at some time. Every
Mm.
visiting day they were there. Even
Mm.
if my dad is traveling, he routes his trip to come through our school. They were
Mm.
just always there. As I'm writing, I just begin to have flashback as to all these things they did, even though they were so
Mm.
busy. So my
Mm.
point is looking, who am I talking to? Am I praising my parents? Am I mentoring my children for the future? Or am I helping these parents out to do it right? The only window of time they have for those 7 teenage years. So I think that is where I need to kind of hone in so I can finalize the language if it's a
Mm.
third person or I'm talking to someone conversationally, I think that's where I need some clarification.
Okay. Wow. That was a beautiful and question. So let's have Jeff go first. She was talking about
Yeah.
identifying our own target audience. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah.
So I'll say this: my parents did a tremendous, put forth a tremendous effort with raising me and doing so much for me lovingly. And so throughout the book, I acknowledged in different things where I saw favor, where they did well, but like my acknowledgments, they easily were my first ones in my first book. So that's kind of how, I don't say how I handled that, but how I took that approach. But then being that I wrote my book on legacy for my first book, I utilized some of the things I did learn from them in the narrative of each chapter. But then also too, what you're saying that you had your book, and then you did it again as a second book, potentially, and a third, and you're kind of taking different. It sounds like you might actually have more than one book total, though. So, different audiences, and it might be that option, because what I learned, though, is I was trying to do too much in one book. And if we get the first book right the first time, then we don't have a second book, because we put it all literally into one book. So John Maxwell, he says, listen, I'm going to talk about 16 laws of communication, but if I also talked about the 21 laws of leadership, then it would be 37 chapters. And then you say, well, I also got 15 laws of growth. So it's like, okay, let's call certain things a day. And I had another Maxwell coach. I was talking to him on a call, and he said, this is actually what we call the art of procrastination and the law of perfection. And it's like, tell me more about your book. Tell me more about this. Tell me about that. And I was like, I'm kind of done, but I'm going through the editing. Now I'm going to go and do this. And for me, it was a vulnerability thing. You're saying, hey, here's all the stuff that's inside of my head, and I'm going to send it out to Amazon to where anybody can buy it. And there's like this judgment, imposter syndrome potential thing that's going on. But to me, what I'm hearing is that, hit send, because it sounds like you're ready to at least have it published, or have an editor and publisher review it. But at the same time, if you're passionate enough to where you think the approach is going to be for this audience and then for this audience, and they may not, if you want to target two audiences in one book, that's probably okay. But if you're starting to throw a third one in, that's multiple books, in my opinion.
Well, that was a good perspective, Jeff. And Coach Rams, what I see about you, just to confirm what Jeff has said, is you have multiple booknesia. That's the diagnosis I'm making. Yeah, and in the sense that there's so much book. But I one thing I want to really encourage you to do is this: think about a parent that book will help. So when you are writing it, I remember when I was writing the book, Live Life Big. Don't live your dream, live your dream. My focus was on people that are living their dream.
Yeah.
And I also have someone in mind that, because like it's, and the people that I have in mind is from the medical communities that I came from. I realize that a lot of people, they are not living their dream. They are living LEAVING instead of LIVING, their dream. And at the end of the day, I met people that they are just miserable. They have money, but they are miserable. So my passion is for those people.
Yeah.
And so when you are writing a book, have a target audience in mind. And like I said, you don't know what to put everything in one book. That's why you have different books. So you can have a book that address parents. You can have a book that address. So like I said, whatever book you are writing, make sure that there's a target audience that this book is all about. Don't put every idea in a book. I remember when I was writing it in 2023, when I had that and kind of epiphany to write book. The first thing I did, that's why I read this 14 about these goals. I wrote all the books, the title there. And I realized that there are different titles that I have for different situations. And guess what? Every book that I wrote down is already published. The new ideas that came along the way, that's what I'm working on now. So that's why I read this when I was reading this book now, and it talks about for a goal to come true. And I found that that's what I did. Even though I've not read that book then, that was what I did. I wrote everything that I wrote right here. All this book has been published. So, but each book was addressing different situations. So think about it. And I believe what I want to challenge you, Coach Rem, is that start with one. Yeah, start with one. So after you finish one, you will now have more clarity about the rest of the book that you're supposed to write. But you have to start with one first. I know there was one that you said you were working on before. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happened to that one?
Well, I finished that one,
Okay.
but this one I'm working on, it has more burning passion.
Okay. Than the
Because
other one. But
yeah,
the
than
first
the
one,
other
you
one.
have already finished that.
Yes.
Why don't we bring that one out first? So what is
Yeah.
the because there's something about when you bring one book out, it's a defining moment
Yeah.
that give that reward all your labor, all your contribution. So what is wrong with bringing that one out that you've already finished? Have you had a story to it? You talk about adding stories to it
Yes, I have stories on both of them
on this
now.
one. Okay, so
Yeah.
why don't we bring the first one out that you finished? Then after that, you can then come to this most passionate one.
Mm-hmm.
How
Oh,
about that?
that sounds good. Thank you.
Exactly. So what timeline are you thinking about for that? Since you already finished it.
Well, I'm targeting my birthday next
Okay.
month, so
Next
I
month.
can
Yeah.
get if the publisher can work with me
Yes,
before
it
between
can.
now
Yeah.
and then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There are publishers that can do that. They can really do
Yeah.
that. Yeah, they
All
can.
I would say is, in that sense, though, I circled the runway. My plane was ready to land, and I just kept going in circles and
Yeah.
circles. And it's like, just land the plane.
Yeah.
You're going to learn through it. You're going to say, hey, John said his first book was his worst, but his second book was even better than the first, and so on and
Yeah.
so forth. And I'm not insinuating that's me a bad book.
Yeah.
But just with my two books, my second one was better. And the third
Yeah.
one that I'm writing, it's going to be even more inspired.
Yeah.
But just land a plane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
And that was it. Yeah. You just have to land, because you can spend all day in here. You have to land the plane. Have we answered your question, Coach Rem?
Yes, you have. Thank you so much. I
Okay,
will
that's
land
great.
my
But
plane.
that was a great. And first of all, I want to commend your effort, your
Mm.
consistency, and we will talk after we done. And I believe I know someone that was at that stage that you are today. She has published her book. In fact, she will be our guest next month.
Thank
So I just
you.
talked to her and refer her to the publisher, and she picked it up from there. And she got excited when the first one came out. Yeah. So I'll call you after this session. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other question? And we see and Coach Britton. Hi Britton, how are you? Can you speak to us?
How are you?
Okay. Your book is coming out. You the one I talked to on last Saturday?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Yes.
So, and do you have any question for Jeff? Your
No,
book is
I don't
coming
think
out
so.
next month. Is that right?
Yeah, I actually just got my
Awesome.
paper copy today, so it's the first time I got to hold it in my hands. So
Oh,
Oh,
how does it
so
feel?
good.
It's like carrying the baby.
yeah, it
Yes.
feels so good.
Oh, let's see.
It's real.
Why are you quick to put it down? You don't put.
I'm
Wow,
really
that was
excited about
good.
it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That was big. I can see all smiles now. So how do you feel holding that book now?
I feel really good. Sorry. I'm on a call, babes. My kids just got home from school.
Okay.
I'm a little discouraged because all of my formatting on InDesign is lost and not recoverable. And so I just actually was troubleshooting with them and they can't recover it either. So, but this is why I gave myself a cushion. It's coming out March 1st.
Okay.
So it's written. I just need to reformat it and make the small changes that I want to, and it'll be ready.
Wow.
And I could really
Congrats.
relate to what she was saying because as I was writing my book, I kind of kept finding myself going in these different directions. And so I just started jotting that down and thought, okay, that's not for this book. Maybe it's for the next book.
Yeah.
And now I've got my second book outlined and my third book, an idea for it already. But it was kind of once I started writing, I think it just sparks all these ideas and you get really excited.
Yeah.
And so it's like focusing on that end goal of your first one and save those ideas for later.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right. Writing the book is like a rabbit. Rabbit has a lot of babies, so you just have to and focus on the rabbit on the first one. And once you get with that, like I said, that's what happened to me. Those ideas was packing up, so I was just putting it in different buckets. So as I'm done with this one, I move to the next, and I find that there was once the first one came out, there was a motivation to do the other
Yeah.
one and the other one and the other one. So it's very important to us know that. And yeah. So and Britton, do you have any question for Jeff or any comment?
No, I don't think so. Like I said, I was just jotting things down and I've enjoyed the conversation because it's got me thinking about what I want to do next. And it's nice hearing that you feel like your subsequent books, you're getting a little bit stronger in your writing and feeling a little bit better about them each time, because I think I could really get stuck in that too, trying to like reach this level of perfection in this first book where really now that I'm just able to hold it, I'm like there might be little things that I wish I could maybe change about it, but I could probably do that forever. So
oh yeah, congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, it's exciting to hear from other people who have been through the same process. So
yeah, exactly. Britton and Jeff, I want you to just factor what I'm about to say. Britton, this is what happened when you finish a book. You are not at the same level when that book was done. Don't forget, you've grown. And that's why this perfection syndrome, continual improvement is better than delayed perfection. So that is what makes a lot of people not to have finished their first book.
That's
They
right.
just feel, oh, I need to add something more. I need to add something. That book will never land. It's like that's what Jeff was saying. It's like the plane is just hovering. You have to land the plane. That's why there's a provision for 2.0.
Yeah.
After some few years, you can now do a 2.0 of the book. That's what the 2.0 is all about. So just land the plane and don't worry. Oh, I have another idea. Listen, you keep doing that. You know. So after 1 year, you can now do 2.0 and come out with another label. And people, oh, that was true. This was the first one. Yeah. Oh, that was the take about that. Yeah. Okay. Any other person? We have Envoy Tony Lewis here. And sir, we appreciate you. Welcome, sir. and he's working on his second project now. And the first book came out last September. You know, that was a great one. I was there. In fact, the venue was packed in Philadelphia. There was no space for people to sit down. Pastor Tony, how are you doing, sir?
Oh, praise God, Dr. Mike. I counted a privilege. Sorry I'm getting on here late, but the whole thing is, I said I didn't want to miss it because I know there's always going to be some good insight and information. And I think even at the end, when I heard about land the plane, I said, look, brother, that's worth the trip. You know,
yes,
that's
sir.
worth the trip. So I appreciate that wisdom that you shared, that I received in that way there too, because definitely so. That normally is a factor. You know, Dr. Mike is a good friend and good brother, and I appreciate Paul's. He has connected with resources like yourself that you know how they say how iron sharpens iron, so does a man sharpen a man. And
yes,
brother,
that's right.
I see that you pretty sharp, brother. And I thank you for coming on. And I gather I see this being recorded, so I'm gonna go back and recoup on the record.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And Jeff is like, you know, working and reading his book. I just like how he was sharing his story. One thing that you talk about in this book, I want to bring it at this point. You talk about quiet quitting, which was really happening with people in the workplace and where they're experiencing detachment. And as I was reading that and looking at how it applies to authors, I believe there's so many quiet quitting in people that want to write a book. And they believe that they have this message to write this book, but there's a quiet quitting, there's a continuous detachment. And I experienced that for 20 years. After I wrote my first 2 books in medical school, I experienced quiet quitting for 20 years. I never wrote one book. That's why we created this authors forum, to keep the passion of writing a book alive. That's what it's all about, because you know, people don't get burned out because of what they do. They get burned out because they forget the why behind the what. That's what Gordon talks about. So the why, is so important. And that's why we create this forum of accountability, to just remind people that the impossible is possible when we focus on what we can do today. What we can do today is what we can do. We can focus on what we can do tomorrow. That's procrastination. We can focus on what we should have done yesterday. So, and that's why this quiet quitting is common. And I met a lot of people that they know they're supposed to write a book. They have quit inside of them. And
Yeah.
so can we, what do you think? How can we kill? What do you think is the solution to this quiet quitting in book writing?
Well, it's again, it's understanding that it's not about me.
Yeah.
If we have a story that we're trying to tell,
Yeah.
it's the idea of planting that seed, and you know, I'm planting seeds because I want to see the fruit come, but it's not, again, it's from a standpoint of where is that fruit going to be planted, or the seeds be planted. So where's that fruit going to be? So if I'm called and God tells me, hey, listen, you know, you have these 2 talents, these 5 talents, or whatever the case might could be. If I bury those in the sand, then I've quit. You know, and I call that failure too. But even though I make mistakes, and even though I go along, you know, and I feel inept, and I feel imposter syndrome, and all these different things, as long as we can, you know, be arm in arm with brothers and sisters like this, that we can grow and learn together and have that accountability format that we have, then it's going to push us forward to do things and actually take those 2 talents, those 5 talents, and we can double those down as to where we can then say, hey, you know, we've been trusted with little, now I'm going to go after much here. And it just allows us to have a larger platform, because leaders, you know, are people that influence well. So it's just utilizing those God-given, you know, talents and traits that we've been blessed with, and actually use them. Because I know that God didn't make a mistake in me, God didn't make a mistake in you. And if we just quiet quit, we're taking those talents, we're taking those things, and we're putting them away, and we're saying that it's not the right thing, you know. But at the same time, thankfully, you know, even Moses had an Aaron, and I have a bunch of Aarons in my life that, you know, kind of bring me along the way when I feel that I'm not, you know, doing as well as I might could be in this or that situation. But quiet quitting, it's tough to get by, but you know, having people like you that are helping us to like I said, iron sharpens iron, holding up others accountable. It's so good. And it just kind of brings us across to that finish line, because tomorrow is not promised. So it's like, let's take advantage of the time that we have now.
That's awesome. And Jeff, you just read the mind, the why behind this vision, and just creating this in the Lamb Global community. We started the Authors Forum just to really it's like an authors supporting authors. And this is a forum where we keep on bringing people, especially people that have just written their first book. The first person that we brought, that was her first book, you know, and it was really good because I read that book, you know, and she just came in because there's something like Britain. She was holding the first book. I got introduced to Britain by Coach Blanca in Maxwell leadership, and just how that book felt. I remember when I grabbed my first book 25 years ago. Oh wow, that day was like, the experience was different. I tell you, you know, and that's what I believe it's all about, and the life that is going to be changed by that book. And that's why, and I want to share this before we close today, that to keep your passion alive, you have to be close to people of passion. You have to stay close to people of passion, because the reason is this: a lot of people are dream killers. You know, they are dream killers. So you need to stay with people that will find that passion alive. You know, the thing is this: some people might even be telling you that, why are you bothering yourself writing books and all that? You see, because you're being consistent with your vision is reminding them of their inconsistency. So they don't want you to go nowhere, so that it will not be haunting them. So that's why it's very important to identify a company, a forum of people like this that will keep you accountable. Listen, I have to stay accountable myself, because there's something about accountability is the secret to profitability. So I want to encourage
Yeah.
everyone, you need to be in this kind of forum and listen to authors, people that are in the game. You have to stay in the game. At times, people get discouraged, when they are in isolation. But discouragement does not come in association. So this is why the forum exists. Next month, we're going to have another author. In fact, this author, she was looking at me writing books and all that, and she now reached out to me. And I met this lady in the Maxwell leadership. I met her in Orlando the first time, and in March, and last year. I didn't know her. I got to know her through Yannick. So I challenged her to join the mentorship. So I stay in touch with her, just corresponding. And she told me about the book. She have done the manuscript and all that. So I just encourage her to the finishing point, recommend her to my publisher. Lo and behold, the book is published today. So I can't wait to hear her story. No, I mean, and she's a young lady, less than 30. And so she just got excited that first one came out. So this is why we have in this forum, to really encourage people about that book that God has put in you. So Jeff, we want to say thank you for your time. Thank you
Yeah, my
for all
pleasure.
that you share with us today. And Jeff's book is available on Amazon, The Other Side of the Coin. And the first one is Still Marinating. And
Yep.
these are good books, and that really very, very inspiring. I'm reading this one right now. It's one of my book lists. And for a book to make my reading list is tough. But this one made it. I'm on it right now. Thank you so much. And I want to say thank you to everyone that is at the Authors Forum this month, even people that came late. Thank you so much for your contribution. This will be made available on our YouTube channel, and for you to have access to it. Till next month, we'll be coming again with another guest author. Don't forget, accountability helps us to remain in the game, and that's why we have this Authors Forum. Till next month,